Hey everyone, welcome to the Novice Reader. The book I'm going to talk about today is something that I read fairly recently. It blew me away, primarily not because of the aesthetic appeal it has got, but because of the sheer facts it uncovered. So here you go. Released in the year 2018, Bad Blood, Secrets and Lies in a Silicon Valley Startup. This book talks about a medical technology startup called Theranos, which was widely touted as the next big thing since Apple Incorporation, and the way it dangerously grew into a big corporation by duping the investors, statesmen, politicians, the medical industry, and the layman into believing in its snake oil marketing. And the investigative journey of Mr. John Carreyrou, who is the author of this book, as well as a Wall Street Journal reporter who exposed this scandal and brought this organization to its knees in the year 2015. Well, if you need to do a medical blood test for some reason, what we usually do is that we go to a nearby lab where the blood would be drawn out by the slightly painful but the traditional syringe and needle mechanism. And most likely, we would be advised about the blood test results within a day or two. What Theranos claimed was that they have developed an automated device which would be able to do more than 100 tests from a single drop of blood taken out of your fingertip in real time, on the fly. And according to Elizabeth Holmes, the CEO of Theranos, this is going to make blood testing more affordable, faster, reliable, and is going to change the entire medical industry in a big way. Now, all these claims by Theranos were good on paper. However, the reality was that none of these machines ever worked reliably. The machines gave results which were highly inaccurate, erroneous, and inconsistent, and they were never in sync with the results provided by the machines conventionally deployed in the market. Elizabeth first came up with this idea about Theranos when she was doing her chemical engineering in Stanford University, from which she eventually dropped out midway through. This idea was initially backed up by her college dean, Mr. Channing Robertson, who became the first board member of Theranos, and he introduced her to other investors and venture capitalists. You'll be really amazed to know that over the course of the 12 years from 2003 2015, the board of directors panel of Theranos included some of the biggest names in the country, such as George Shultz and Henry Kissinger, both of whom were former secretaries of the state. James Mattis, he was the former United States Defense Secretary. Richard Kovacevic, he was the former CEO of Wells Fargo. And David Boyce, who was a famous attorney. The investors panel also included some of the biggest stalwarts, such as Larry Ellison, the Walton family, Carlos Slim, Rupert Murdoch, and Tim Draper. And if you talk about partnerships, Theranos had partnerships some of the big wigs, such as Cleveland Clinic, Safeway, and Walgreens, to name a few. Now, as a layman, you might wonder why nobody raised a concern all these years and these scams and scandals and manipulations went undetected at least for half a dozen years. Well, there are multiple reasons. First of all, Elizabeth was so charismatic and so exuberant that she was able to convince pretty much anybody. And any of the apprehensions that was brought up by anybody was so skillfully and tactfully quashed as well. Imagine, how could you possibly have such a star-studded lineup of investors and board of directors panel for Theranos, which I talked about earlier. Coming to the employees, pretty much all the activities inside the organization were done so discreetly that all the employees were mandated to sign non-disclosure agreements, NDAs, when they joined the organization. Not only that, they were not allowed to talk freely within the organization between different departments, and they were not allowed to update their experiences and anything about Theranos on their LinkedIn profiles. They were also not allowed to send to send the official documents into their personal email IDs. Any breach to it or any voices of concerns were quashed, rebuked, and reprimanded and were threatened by lawsuits. And some of them were even fired on the spot. Now, Elizabeth was not alone doing all these things. She was backed up by Mr. Sunny Balwani, who was the second in command and the chief operating officer of Theranos. The reality was that Sunny and Elizabeth were partners and were living together. The fact they did not disclose to their board of directors. Now, coming to the state and the medical regulatory proceedings, Sunny, Elizabeth, and team always tried to bypass and evade all these medical proceedings. And whenever these medical regulatory bodies came to test their labs, they did not show them the full picture, the full state of affairs of what's happening in Theranos, thereby duping them. And in most of the cases, they manipulated the test results, which was tantamount to full-blown breach. I need to be very honest here. The book wasn't really appealing to me, at least for the first half of it, because it was not believable. Like, how can somebody dupe so many people, so many regulatory bodies, and so many big wigs? Totally unbelievable. However, things radically changed, and the book became unputdownably riveting after the first half when John Carreyrou stepped into the scene. John was a Wall Street Journal reporter then, and he was alarmed by the apprehensions raised by many of the medical practitioners about the credibility of the Theranos devices. He started following up on his leads, and he discreetly started following up with some of the whistleblowers within the organization to start his write-ups. When he published his write-ups on the Wall Street Journal, he was threatened by Theranos with severe repercussions. Despite all the odds, John was able to bring the scandal to the limelight, and it is now considered as one of the biggest scandals in the history of the United States. All right, that's pretty much what I want to talk about today about this book. If you're interested, I would definitely recommend you to read this book. It won't disappoint you for sure. And with that said, thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you next time.